Okay, so this is going to be my part one series of the subject critical thinking. And today I'm going to talk about racism, which is a subject I've been avoiding because people aren't in the same conversation as me anyways, and I'll explain why. Today's October 22nd, 2020. So the teacher from the University of Ottawa, the context of the N-word she used was likely related to how certain cultures are reclaiming certain words. Now, sometimes the way they do it creates more tribe versus tribe mentalities, so it propagates the stigma related to ignorance and discrimination when we are all really one species. So I don't know the exact context of her lesson, but it's very likely I'm supporting her in this because from the little bit I've heard is I do not believe that she was doing anything negative or derogatory. For example, I can use the word Negro in a scientific way, and I'll explain it very soon. So I'm very disappointed with how the university responded, especially the administrative part, and the social media is responding, because again, this is why I'm avoiding the subject of racism, is because you're not having the right conversations. And it's in government, and again, you're not having the right conversations. So the origins of our species, our ancestor, we don't have different races, by the way, but we have ancestors that deviated in where they lived on Earth, and their diet, what was available, the climate, how cold it was, if they lived close to the ocean, the equator, things like that, okay? And it created subcategories with minor variations. Some are more positive, some are more negative, and all of them have slight variations in this way, okay? And one of the categories has something to do with the N-word, okay? But it was scientifically determined what these words are. Now, if the scientific community wants to talk about this, but rename every category if they want, although they don't have to. It kind of shows a little bit that we're not really in the right conversations, or we don't even know how to control shifts of our paradigms if we are changing these. But I think the subject should be, these words were just meant to define different categories, and it's not really these scientific words to define these subgroups of ethnicities of origins, which are still one species in a negative way. I mean, just looking in Canada, we have people still alive today where the school books in the religious schools that were where they were forced to go still had categories for people of different skin, and those were very negative. And that's not what these scientific words mean in this way. So the teacher may or may not have known about these ethnicities, but she was likely using it in a way that is not something that should scare us. Okay, now I'm not saying that that word didn't cause a lot of hardship in people's lives, but it wasn't because of the word. It was because of the intent of the user. Okay, and the intent can vary. So we have to talk about this. So look up people, what those origin subgroups are and what words are given to them, and you'll be surprised to see what they are. But this N-word, even if just for this academic reason, needs to be used, and it needs to be used and changed to have a more positive or neutral meaning. So my BA is from the University of Ottawa, okay, and I wasn't impressed with most teachers, and I gave complaints. Second cycle diploma was at Vancouver Island University, where people claim to be experts of sustainability. It said so on their card. It said, they were saying it, yet they didn't want to participate in a debate with me about it, which of course ends the thesis debate portion of my program, is they actually were not able to think in systems. So they were not able to even realize, they didn't have the schemas to realize they were not defining sustainability properly to even be in a debate about it. But it's okay, they had their elite status. Now a lot of academic administrations are infected with PhDs. And PhDs is already a very minute way to see the world. It's very compromised scientifically, let's say. So if you add that to, you now make them administrators, Yeah, it doesn't get better. So this teacher's peers are supposedly supporting her, but do they know the context? Are they doing it for the right reasons? Are they doing it out of self-defense for themselves? Are they doing it because of what happened in France recently? So again, ask this. I'm doing research right now approaching PhDs in anthropology, and it's incredible on how these experts, the top of their field, I mean, they're the presidents of associations, and they know very little about anthropology and themselves as primates, and what category. I don't know if they think they fall in this angelic category that's not on the table of animals, kingdoms. I don't know. It's kind of weird, their answers. It shows, again, developmental disorders from those paradigms that they have their PhDs in. Darwin, still very much misunderstood, even by people that debate on his side. Again, because although there was a competitive component to what he was writing about, most of his notes pointed out to collaborations and cooperations. And in fact, that's how we are here today as a species, as a genus, is we are part of a system of cybernetics that had great cooperations of information for the betterment of the entire system. And we are the only species sick in this way, which I blame the supernatural paradigms and the magical paradigms. So religions and money is the modern way to see the magical paradigms. So again, we don't realize that there's no other species as developmentally disabled to live on this planet as us, because competitiveness is now such a strong root of almost every culture and even families that we are most likely doomed as a species. So to be scared of words is to also disconnect from reality, because you know, how can you solve something when you're not even starting with the right premise of where you are and who you are as a species? So a lot of people are scared of the word accountability. And what's even sadder is the word accountability has been lost in Canada in French. The proper word and the proper way to define that word in French is lost. And the Quebec French cultures did not defend this when it was happening over time. So again, these discussions must be had. David Thurston was asking that's Quebecois leader, a very judgmental kind of specific tone, right, in his question. And I think it was wise for the Parti Québécois to give a short answer. But a lot of people jump on that, and CBC News World is big on this kind of lack of objectivity, is they will show this soundbite and propagate the concept of disconnecting from reality that happens when people make assumptions. So again, I think it was smart that he didn't answer that, because first of all, he'd have to do it efficiently in a very long answer, and this guy was already kind of judgmental and confrontational. So, you know, I don't know his opinion, I can say that. And he gave a very good answer to say he disagreed with generally where the question was going and where this guy's stance was, because he was pretty much given his opinion with it. And Annamie Paul, who I contacted when she got elected on that same week, and I said, hey, I'd like to help the Green Party. I don't believe it exists, but I'd like to help it. And maybe it will exist someday. And one of the things I said is I do not believe that there is the concept of different races in our species. But again, you could see from her answer that she never got to work with me so she could provide a better answer, because her answer was very short and it's very specific about she wants to fight this. And she was very likely in our generation a target of this word used in a negative way. I can't blame her for that. But again, her answer shows that she was also not in a paradigm that would be productive to have these types of conversations with. Probably too many triggers, and probably also too far away from the scientific paradigms to have us all realize, hey, we're kind of actually all on the same page. We just had to define our words. We had to get to a foundational paradigm to realize this is where we're starting from. And somebody like me could help them with that, but it's not something they will allow me to do. Now, some people might say, oh, you're a white person, you don't know what it's like to suffer from discrimination. I've written so many blogs about the discrimination that I suffer from, and I suffer from some that nobody can relate to me about because of the paradigms I not only think but behave in. When I was in Asia, for example, I was a victim of discrimination. And when I was in Uganda, I very much was. And it's very sad because in Uganda, a lot of people were not as poor as I was. And they would never believe. I think even when I showed them my bank account balance, they probably thought I had two or three other bank accounts. And because I'm not religious, they might think I'm not honest enough to divulge it. But they couldn't believe that I wasn't rich. So and again, how did this end up being a form of discrimination? Because I lost opportunities to help them, and so did they, of course. And it was all in a way that I wasn't treated fairly, such as suspiciously, because they thought it can't be true. And what's he hiding, and how are we going to convince them to help us with this money when I was trying to help them in ways to realize, for example, they're not as poor as they think they are. And they were mostly convinced to believe that they're poor compared to other countries that don't have food growing all year round around them, for example. So yeah, I've suffered from discrimination, and I always will as my paradigms get farther and farther away from the norm. So for me, like a bad word for me, example is PhD or MD doctor. So for me, if people say, "Hey, doctor," oh, some people in Uganda call me that. I say, no, if you want to say doctor, say Doctor of Humanics. Don't say doctor with my name, because I don't want to associate with people with PhDs or MDs, because in my experience, well documented, the majority of them are incompetent. And it's a bad word now for me. So it's all a question of interpretation. So I'll continue. My phone made a noise. I'm not sure if it's the battery. So again, at the second level, for me, my master's diploma, it was very easy to notice that I don't have peers. So it's very unlikely I will continue anyways to the PhD level without peers. So, and for, you have to have, you're judged by a group of your peers in a thesis debate, and I can't seem to find peers. Everybody thinks they're up there when I can easily, in a debate without, enlisting in their program, prove that they're down here. So why I'm not in politics? Well, if I was in politics, I'd have to be busy teaching my colleagues all the time. I'd have to teach them about critical thinking, and that includes teaching Christopher DiCaprio about critical thinking, and maybe he can take over from me when I'm satisfied that he's good enough to demonstrate it, not just put it on a blackboard and name a few terms related to it. And I'd have to teach in French and English about communication. Now, communication is also something that needs to be done. I've had an ex-girlfriend, she had a master's degree from Ryerson in communication. She's very good at writing, I love her writing, but actually talking to another human being in relationship to solve issues is, again, how do we define communication? Is it only if somebody makes a living out of it, like DiCaprio makes a living talking about critical thinking, although it's very easy for me to demonstrate that he doesn't really do it on a daily basis efficiently or in making choices in his life? I don't know. So the real problem, and these are the conversations I'd like to be in, is systemic ignorance. So when people are ready for these kinds of conversations, I'm in, and I've already got a lot of ways that we can make progress with that.